Germany is slowly moving out of the economic lockdown. I have made a video already about the changes that are going to come in the following days and weeks. Also, the majority of that video is about the document that inspired those changes and how it is hijacked by ideologues, in my opinion. And this video will be about the rest, which I could not cover in my earlier video because it just grew too long. You don't want to listen for hours and hours. I want to resume the discussion with education. The fourth grade is expected to return to school soon, and this is the case because they are expected to keep the distance, but they still need a lot of attention by the teacher, and they cannot be trained over the internet, for example, like some of the older children. When it comes to the older ones, the exams are supposed to go forward so that there won't be trouble with the cohorts who want to move on to different schools or want to take jobs soon, and those have some preparation for the exams now going forward. The suggestions accompanying this opening from the Leopoldina are that the space should be used in the school. I mean, not all classes resume business as usual. So the teachers should split up the classes into groups of 15 pupils and teach them in separate rooms. The times can also be shifted, that some parts of the class are attended by in the morning and some parts in the afternoon. I'm not sure if that is to materialize, but that is one of their proposals. And then one issue that sounds good with a young one is a bit disturbing for my ears, and that is they want to restrict the curriculum to the core subjects. And when it comes to the fourth graders, I'm all for it, because they suggest it's the language, I mean German in our case, and mathematics. Okay, I think the elementary school should focus on reading, writing, and basic elementary mathematics. That's fine. But then, when it comes to the older kids, their proposals for the core of education is also German, then mathematics, and foreign languages. I have already an issue with German, honestly, because I think we have to have a discussion of what is the core of what needs to be taught. I have noticed a shift in that subject from teaching children how to write properly, accurately, and learning the basic skills like setting up letters and so forth, to reading poetry and discussing arts and so forth. And I'm not sure how much of this is the core at the higher classes. So this is one minor objection of mine. But then comes and mathematics I'm completely fine with. And then comes the issue of foreign languages. If it would say English, I would go along. You do need English, but be honest, if you have not a special life situation, it is very, very unlikely that you will ever need a different language from the main language of your country plus English. So they shift this into what they consider the core and don't even mention natural sciences. They don't mention engineering, and they don't mention law, of course. It has never been a part of the curriculum, but it should be, quite frankly. The very basics that you need to navigate through life are not taught, and they are not even considered to be the basics because they want to read poetry all day long. And this, for me, says something about who was actually on that board. They run under the title the Academy of Sciences, but you wonder how many true scientists were on the board when natural sciences are not even considered. The next topic, maybe related to this, is the internationalism religion. Because maybe we teach our children Turkish and Chinese and is of course built on a creed that anything that has to do with moving homes makes you a morally higher, greater human being. They suggest in a situation of crisis that we should advance the integration of Europe, and this is a standard phrase meaning more institutions on the EU level. That means fewer officials being accountable to any electorate. It means more contracts that nobody can actually unpack and rework. Integration of Europe has meant for the last decades taking power away from the citizen and moving it to people who are ever less accountable to anything outside of their office. No markets, no elections, nothing. Okay, this has been integration of Europe, of the EU, and this is supposedly what needs to be advanced. And with an eye on internationalism, they use an interesting or worrisome word, and that is Staatsziel. That means the objective of the state. With reference to this international cooperation stuff, they write, among other things, it is still the objective of the state and the well-understood interest of the Federal Republic of Germany to advance the integration of Europe. And the very idea of a Staatsziel, of an objective of state, is already an anti-democratic sentiment. It just means you know already what the state is going to do because you're the fortune teller, and everybody else has to oblige. It is the aim of the state to do this, and there is no discussion necessary anymore. That's the focus. And what I have noticed coming from the left in the past was that they want to lift up more and more policies into the constitution, and also they want to call ever more things human rights, because this is supposedly outside of what the citizens can decide, and therefore it must all be moved into important documents, and just the importance of the documents are instrumentalized or weaponized for their political gains. This is a very anti-democratic approach, but they of course call this democratic because constitution does have something to do with democracy, and so do words like human rights. And if you want to exploit that, you just claim you are for democracy because you are littering these institutions and documents with your agenda. And this goes on with the money shifting activity that has been started already while this document was written, and they are of course supporting this, and they see a chance, that's weird enough, they see a chance in we promising each other to bail each other out in this situation of crisis. I personally don't even bother to follow all of those treaties right now, because I think there will be a time, and it won't be too long, that we have to revisit what we have written and said and so forth, and have to renegotiate what can be paid to whom for what reasons. And I think a lot of those promises we are making now, shifting money from Germany to Italy, from France to Poland, whatever. it won't materialize because we are all running out of money right now. And we should first actually get a hold of the situation before we promise too much. Strange enough, the Europeans, being leftists and being, presenting themselves as busybodies, were chiming into the democratic cries that Trump were not doing enough. And their doing was, of course, expensive monetary policy and making promises of who will pay the bill for whom. I think this is falling apart anyway, what they have been busying about. And I also suppose that the majority of tests and medication and so forth will be created in America. Well, but reading the document, you can tell that the people we have summoned to write a consultancy paper for us is very different from that what you see in America and Great Britain. There you have the best people coming together, giving daily briefings and discuss the current state of the art. You can disagree with these people, and I actually do. But the overall information that comes out of the White House briefings is of a much more solid nature than what we have come up with. Meanwhile, our busybodies were, busy moving money around, or supposedly they at least gave a lot of lip service to moving money around. And it's really difficult to say what of it will stand the test of time. The entire situation is still too unstable. But those people at the Leopoldina see it as a chance that we make promises of who will pick the bill of whom. And they try to sell this point to conservatives, I suppose, by saying, well, Germany is an export-driven economy, so the most important partners in the EU must be bailed out, so that we can export our goods to them. That sounds kind of nice. It sounds like, yeah, you're interested in the economy and in our economy and so forth. But ultimately, this is a very lame way of, discussing the promises of moving money around like crazy. Anyway, I think even the treaties they are signing right now, if push comes to shove, they will renegotiate and it will ultimately fall apart. Or at least that's what I hope, quite frankly. Amidst of all this cheesy love-bombing rhetoric, there is a phrase that I find quite disturbing. And it's also in the mid of the economic discussion that we have to shove money around with empty promises. And this phrase is controllable international relations. It is in the context of moving money around and economy. So if you think that the entire economy should be controlled not just by your state but some supranational remote organization totally detached from any voting accountability, and from the market, that's most certainly what they have in mind. You are entering a stage of Soviet communism, and I think this is really what a lot of these people on the round table had in mind. And also, controllable. This is the word that really triggers me. Who do they want to control? Do they want to control representatives that were democratically elected of the member states? Do they want to control the corporations and also every business, small and big? Who do they want to control and in what manner? It sounds a lot like a centralization of power. Yesterday I had a glimpse on a talk show called Maybrit Illner, and the lady had this brilliant idea that we should maybe centralize studies, scientific studies. She was actually asking the question whether it is reasonable to have a study in this state and a study in that state. Her suggestion is that, if you have multiple studies, scientific studies, why not just have one? Last but not least, it is very telling how they connect the supposed hotspots. They barely talk about the economy. It seems, a topic they want to touch because they cannot totally ignore that this is what people are concerned about most outside their house. But it is really something they don't want to talk about. They have too much money, and most of it is paid for by mandatory contributions like taxes, for example, and these people are detached from economic life, from normal considerations, and therefore they kind of try to link what pet topics they have all together, and the extraordinary statement they come up with is that the threatened climate and the biodiversity, or the species, the variety of animal species and plant species are a part of the risk for future epidemics. Now, this is not even explained, and again, I think there are just not enough scientists, true scientists, on the board of the Academy of Sciences. The idea, what I have heard out of the propaganda of the last weeks, is that the bat that carried the largest, genome match with the current virus could have been driven into the city through deforestation, that somehow killing the habitats of the wildlife, and we are talking China, by the way, and central China, which is far less populated than Europe, for instance. China is, a densely populated country, but only really on the coasts. But anyway, the reasoning in the propaganda is that maybe because the habitats of the animals are destroyed, they have to move into the proximity of human beings, and therefore species come in touch with ourselves and can, have these viruses jump because of the proximity. Well, this is silly for a variety of reasons. But you can tell how these people try to stitch together their ideology first, and then they also care a bit about your health and about your economy. I wrap it up here. Thank you for listening, and hopefully I see you soon. Bye.